We are once again getting that same phrase we're all used to hearing when the Fed was keeping interest rates at the zero lower bound, when they were buying securities in the market, and when stimulus was running rampant. And that phrase is new all-time highs. We are hearing new all-time highs in Apple, at least on the per share basis. However, technically, because they have bought back stock, the market cap isn't at new all-time highs, but that leaves a very big debate. And for a long time, these buybacks were illegal because it just seems strange. You know, the company buys back shares, pushes the price up, but technically the shares exist and they can be sold into the market at any time and dilute existing shareholders. It's a very strange phenomenon, but they're not at the all-time high market cap, technically, even though those shares exist. And if you did the calculation with those shares outstanding instead of, held in the treasury of the company, it would be a very different equation. However, that's for another day. We're just going to use this to go to the past for a moment and discuss some things. So I believe that the ultimate catalyst and the ultimate force for the downside that we're going to and possibly may see in this market is not going to be an instant realization. I think it's going to be a blunt scenario that plays out over a long period of time. And I've talked about it, but I've been watching some Ray Dalio, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, flesh this out a little bit more, because it's something that's been seen throughout history, and it's very clear and obvious to see why it's happened and why it's going to happen again. So in the economy, debt creates cycles. Why does debt create cycles? Because if you have an income, you can only spend that income. But if you have an income and interest rates are low and it's super easy to get credit, which it was just a year or so ago, you can increase your income essentially. You can increase your spending. That's something that happens in the economy. So everyone can take money out from a bank, from wherever, and the overall spending in the economy increases. And one person's spending is another person's income. So you have this self-reinforcing cycle that builds on itself. And we had the best possible environment for this. So we essentially had the peak debt cycle, the peak stimulative debt environment. This is what occurred during COVID. This is what led to inflation. Incomes were rising, spending was going through the roof, ballooning, etc. And there's still some of that. There's still some of that money sitting in people's accounts. You hear all this kind of stuff, cash on the sidelines, whatever. But we know now that the situation is changing. Banks are increasing their lending requirements. Interest rates are going up. So now it's suddenly more expensive to borrow money. And this is when things start to reverse, because let's just assume, based on the situation at hand and in the scenario, that's the cycle scenario, the opposite side, that lending begins to decrease. So you have this self-reinforcing pattern where lending is occurring. It's very stimulative. One person's income is another person's spending. You're giving people more money. That's other people's income. That makes them even more creditworthy. Just goes boom, 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 boom. It's self-reinforcing. Now you have money being shredded. You have the cost of borrowing going up. You have banks increasing lending requirements, and that begins to slow the cycle. And when you go this way, it gets bad. Why does it get bad? Because all of a sudden, the people who were getting that lending and increasing their spending are now not only not getting that lending, but they have to pay back those debts. They have to pay back those debts. That credit that once increased spending now becomes debt that has to be paid back. When you borrow money, you can spend more than you earn in the short run, but you have to spend less than you earn in the long run. So now we're on this deleveraging side of the equation. And as the deleveraging begins to occur, what was once increasing incomes, increasing spending, and then increasing incomes is now going to be decreasing incomes or spendable capital, decreasing spending, decreasing incomes, and it's going to start going in reverse. And then you're going to get into a situation where, because incomes are going down, people can't pay debts. And because there's less money and there's less spending, asset prices will fall. And it's gonna happen. This is the way it always has worked, always will work. Debt creates cycles. We're now very clearly, very obviously in the other side of the debt cycle. However, the stock market is, instead of going to past debt cycles like it was last year, it seemed, it's now going to past recoveries. So it has accepted and created a premise that the worst has occurred, a soft landing is going to be achieved, and V-shaped recovery, because we had that last time. But we have to realize that this cycle doesn't occur at the snap of a finger. It takes time. It takes time for that first person to not qualify for that loan, for them not to spend that money, for that next person's income to drop, for them to start paying their debts. All these kinds of things. But it just so happens that student loan payments are coming in, and that might be some sort of catalyst that makes this situation become a little bit more realized. Anyways, I still feel very convinced that this is going to occur, that stocks are not dealing with that situation. Asset prices in general, real estate's not dealing with that situation. But I feel very confident that it's going to happen. And it's going to take some time, and it's going to be blunt. It's not going to be precise. It's going to play out over a number of years. And there's an additional catalyst which has never occurred when this has occurred. And that is QT. That is the active selling of securities into the debt market by the largest purchaser and largest balance sheet of debt securities, the Federal Reserve. During that boom, they were buying the securities. They were propping the market up. They were providing liquidity. Everyone was happy. Now, they're doing the opposite. They realized that was a mistake. They did too much of that. They started doing it initially in March 2020 when markets froze up to provide liquidity to the Treasury market, the bedrock of the financial system, as a safeguard. And they took that too much, it went too far, created inflation, they printed a lot of money. Now they have to reverse it. So I think this side of the cycle, I don't think it's just going to be some nothing burger. Not some, soft landing, no big deal, has absolutely no effect whatsoever. We can just go right back to where we were, all-time highs, boom, here we are. No. I think it's going to be a very meaningful situation in which incomes drop, people have to pay debts, asset prices fall, and there's going to be some defaults. And it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be painful. It's going to suck. It's taken... this has been a very strong year. We've done literally nothing but go up. And it's gotten even more that way in the past few weeks. But I think this is a very, boom, soft landing, Fed's going to pause. This is all short-term catalyst, short-term thinking. This is a multi-year cycle that we're dealing with. And I think the multi-year cycle is ultimately what's going to prevail. So that's the point of this video, discussing the cycle, letting you know that I believe that this is a more blunt situation. It's not based on a catalyst. It's not a trade. It's not a this. It's not a that. It's a debt cycle. And it takes years, and it happens throughout history. And Ray Dalio has a great video on it called How the Economic Machine Works. Okay, if you want to know how the economic machine works, it's what I just said. And Ray Dalio has a great video on debt cycles. Very important. He says, debt creates cycles. And we just had, if it wasn't obvious already, a tremendous boom in the debt cycle. And now we're going to try and achieve what he calls a beautiful deleveraging. But a beautiful deleveraging, if we can achieve that, which reasonable probability it is a beautiful deleveraging, is not without nothing. Okay? It's not without nothing. When you deleverage, incomes fall. And that's just what happens. And that's what the Fed wants. Ideally, that's what they want. They want spending to come down. That's the whole point of this thing. It's like you can see it in plain sight, but you can't see it if you're allowing price to dictate your sentiment and dictate your decisions. So that's today's video. Until next time, peace out.